For decades, California feared a man who seemed to vanish into thin air. He slipped through quiet neighborhoods at night. No witnesses, almost no evidence, just broken locks and terrified victims. Investigators chased him across counties, across years, across changing crime scenes. But the killer kept evolving. He was careful, calculated, and worst of all. But even silence leaves patterns, and deep inside the FBI's behavioral science unit, investigators believed they could reconstruct the mind behind the crimes. This is the chilling story of how psychological profiling helped decode the predator who would later be known as the Golden State Killer. During the mid-1970s, police departments across California began receiving disturbing reports. A masked intruder was entering homes late at night. He targeted suburban neighborhoods, quiet streets, young couples, homes where windows were sometimes left open to catch the summer breeze. Victims described a man who moved with terrifying precision. He already seemed to know the layout of their homes. He whispered threats. Sometimes he stayed for hours. Other times he vanished in minutes. The attacker became known as the East Area Rapist. Years later, investigators would realize the same predator was responsible for multiple murders across the state. Eventually, the name changed, the Golden State Killer. But despite hundreds of officers searching for him, the suspect was invisible. No clear suspect, no reliable eyewitness, and the crime stretched across multiple jurisdictions, making coordination difficult. Yet investigators knew one thing: this wasn't random. There was a mind behind the pattern. At the time, a relatively new discipline was beginning to shape criminal investigations: behavioral profiling. Inside the FBI's behavioral science unit, specialists studied crime scenes to reconstruct the psychology of offenders. Instead of asking only what happened, they asked why. Why this victim? Why this location? Why this method? Profilers believed that every criminal act revealed fragments of the offender's personality. The Golden State Killer had left investigators almost nothing physical, but psychologically, he had left a trail. Profilers noticed something chilling about the attacks. The offender followed rigid rituals. He often stalked neighborhoods days or weeks before striking. He disabled lights. He tied victims in specific ways. Sometimes he placed objects on the backs of victims, a terrifying psychological tactic to control movement. This level of planning suggested a highly organized offender, not impulsive, not chaotic, someone disciplined, someone patient. Profilers concluded the suspect likely had military or law enforcement training. He moved quietly. He understood tactics, and he seemed confident he wouldn't be caught. Another detail disturbed investigators even more. The offender sometimes called victims after the crimes.
Breathing into the phone, whispering threats.
This behavior suggested a need for psychological dominance. The crimes weren't just about violence, they were about control. From those behavioral clues, the FBI began constructing a profile. The suspect was likely male, in his mid-20s to early 30s when the crimes began. He probably lived within the communities he attacked. He might have been married or in a stable relationship, allowing him to blend into suburban life. Most chilling of all, profilers believed he appeared ordinary, not the stereotypical criminal, not someone who attracted suspicion. Instead, he likely lived quietly, worked regularly, maybe even held a job that gave him knowledge of police procedures, which meant the killer could have been hiding in plain sight, walking past neighbors, shopping at local stores, living a completely normal life during the day, while hunting at night. Profilers also noticed something else. The crimes were evolving. Early attacks involved burglary and stalking. Later crimes escalated into extreme violence and murder. This pattern suggested a psychological progression. The offender was gaining confidence, refining his methods, testing limits. Yet eventually, the crimes stopped. The Golden State Killer disappeared in the mid-1980s. Profilers debated why. Had he died, been imprisoned for another crime, moved away, or simply aged out of offending? Without a suspect, the mystery remained unsolved for decades. Then, in 2018, technology changed everything. Investigators used a new forensic technique called genetic genealogy. DNA from crime scenes was compared to public ancestry databases. Slowly, detectives built a family tree, and the evidence led them to a quiet man living in California, Joseph James DeAngelo. When police arrested him, the revelation shocked the nation. DeAngelo had once been a police officer. He lived in suburban neighborhoods, and he had spent decades blending into normal life, almost exactly the life FBI profilers had predicted. The psychological blueprint had been accurate all along. They just didn't yet have the name. The case of the Golden State Killer became one of the most powerful examples of behavioral profiling in modern criminal investigation. Even when evidence grows cold, human behavior still leaves clues. Every decision, every ritual, every pattern. Together they form the psychological fingerprint of a killer, and sometimes that fingerprint lasts longer than the crime itself. If you found this story fascinating, make sure to subscribe for more deep-dive true crime investigations every week. And tell me in the comments, do you think psychological profiling is one of the most powerful tools in catching criminals today? Because sometimes, the key to solving a mystery isn't just evidence, it's understanding the mind behind it.